Hi, Yara. I miss you. It's time to read another story. And I've been trying to pull the different stories that were meaningful to me, but all of the stories in this book have been childhood stories that I read. So I've just decided to go through the table of contents with it. So tonight's story is called Hansel and Gretel. It's about a brother and a sister and the adventures they face together to help each other. I don't know if you know the story, but tonight we'll read it. So get snuggled up, get calm down. Let's take a deep breath. Let all the stress of the day go. Think about happy things. Get snuggled up in your bed. If you have your stuffed animal, your little Minnie Mouse from Reenie, snuggle up with that and let's read. Hansel and Gretel, adapted from the Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time, remember every story starts once upon a time, like just a way to help us get in the mood to read that old fashioned story. There were a brother and sister named Hansel and Gretel. They lived with their father and stepmother in a small cottage at the edge of the woods. Their father was a good man who loved his children more than anything else in the world. His wife, however, here's going to be that evil stepmother. And just so you know, not all stepmothers and stepfathers are evil. There are good ones, but all the stories they don't want to make the moms and dads bad. So they make the step parents bad. Um, they lived with their father and stepmother in a small cottage. The father was a good man who loved his children more than anything else in the world. His wife, however, was a mean and selfish woman who became jealous of the affection her husband showed his children. Their father was a woodcutter. A woodcutter is a person does just what it sounds like, takes trees and chops them up, or takes wood and chops them up for fireplaces. And he did all that he could to provide for his family, to bring money into the home, to give them food and shelter, a place to live and place to sleep. But due to a recent famine, and that means there's no food that's growing, and so people are hungry, there's not enough water to grow the food, that's a famine. But due to a recent famine spreading across the land, times were hard for peasant families. Peasant families are poor families in the kingdom. Food was scarce, and many worried about surviving the approaching winter. They didn't think they'd have enough food because if in the winter nothing grows. So when the summer is there, they harvest all that they can and they save it for the winter. And if there's nothing to harvest in the summer, they'll be out of food in the winter. If we don't do something, we'll starve, the wife told the woodcutter one night before bed. We barely have enough food for the two of us. We must get rid of Hansel and Gretel if we want to survive. I could never get rid of my children, the woodcutter said. They mean everything to me. It'll be easy, said the wife, who had already devised a plan. Tomorrow, we'll take Hansel and Gretel deep into the forest and leave them there. Can you imagine? Um, they're so young, they won't be able to find their way home. They'll get lost, and a hungry pack of wolves will find them. We'll never have to worry about feeding them again. I would rather starve than abandon my children, the woodcutter said. I won't hear another word of this. We will find another way to get through the winter. Despite her husband's wishes, the wife was convinced her plan was the only solution. Luckily, Hansel and Gretel were still awake and heard their father and stepmother's conversation through the thin walls of their cottage. What will we do, Hansel? Gretel asked her brother. Our stepmother will surely try to abandon us in the woods while father is away chopping wood tomorrow. Don't fret, don't worry, Gretel, Hansel said. I'll gather white pebbles tonight while they sleep and create a trail to follow back home. So Hansel snuck outside while his father and stepmother slept and gathered white pebbles as he could find. The next morning, once the woodcutter left to chop down trees, his wife led the children into the woods. Where are we going? Gretel asked. To collect firewood, their stepmother said. Now be quiet and follow me. She led them deep into the heart of the forest, farther than Hansel and Gretel had ever gone before. Hansel dropped a white pebble every few steps, leaving a trail behind them. They traveled the whole day and came to a stop just as the sun began to set. And let's see if we can show a picture. I don't know. I don't know how to take the blur off the background because I haven't set it like that on my YouTube channel. But that's Hansel and Gretel. And being further back, I think you can see it better. Well, I can't make it bigger. But there they are, brother and sister. Let me see. No, come on. Ooh, does that help? That seemed to help. There we go. So they're in their little, and they look, their faces, if you can see them, they look like grown people, but their clothes are supposed to be like little peasant children from the olden days. I love Hansel's hat. Now look around and help me gather the wood, the stepmother said. But before she finished her sentence, she dashed back in the direction from which they had come, leaving her stepchildren all alone in the woods. Hansel and Gretel followed the trail of white pebbles to their cottage. The forest became so dark after nightfall, the small white stones were the only thing they could see. By the time they returned, their father was worried sick about them. Thank the Lord you're all right, the woodcutter said, and embraced his children tightly. Where is your stepmother? To Hansel and Gretel's surprise, they had arrived home before their stepmother. Without a trail of pebbles, the woodcutter's wife had a hard time navigating through the woods and returned several hours after her stepchildren. She was furious to see that Hansel and Gretel had found their way back to the cottage. What happened? The wood What happened? The woodcutter asked his wife. We went to retrieve firewood, the wife said. I turned my back for 1 minute and they were gone. I pray it doesn't happen again, the woodcutter said. Okay, here's the problem with that. The father should have known. She's already said that's what she was going to do. She did it, and then he forgives her and lets her stay. Makes no sense to me. We, don't worry, it won't, the wife said and glared at the stepchildren when her husband wasn't looking. That night, the wife locked Hansel and Gretel in their room so they couldn't sneak out to collect any more white pebbles. Oh, Hansel, what are we to do now? Gretel asked her brother. Our stepmother will surely try to abandon us again tomorrow. Don't fret, Gretel, Hansel said. Tomorrow morning at breakfast, we'll save our crusts of bread and use breadcrumbs to make a trail. Just as predicted, as soon as their father left the next morning, their stepmother led Hansel and Gretel back into the woods. They walked even longer this time, traveling farther into the trees than ever before. Farther is distance, further is ideas, like you're further away in your relationship from your mother since you moved away. But you're not going to be further away from your Omi or your mother. You're going to always feel close, close, close. Where's our farther? I lost my place. Hansel left crumbs behind them as they went and nearly ran out by the time they stopped. Now gather up some wood, their stepmother said. Once again, she dashed back toward the cottage and left Hansel and Gretel all alone in the woods. It was so late that Hansel and Gretel decided to sleep in the woods and wait for morning to follow the breadcrumbs home. Unfortunately, by the time they woke, the morning birds had eaten all the breadcrumbs they'd left behind. Oh no, what are they going to do? Hansel and Gretel walked through the woods in what they hoped was the right direction, but there were so many trees it was impossible to tell. They walked for hours and hours, never finding a familiar part of the forest. They finally found a friendly white bird and followed it through the woods, hoping it might lead them home. The longer they followed the bird, the more the wonderful aroma filled the air. It was a sweet smell, as if something delicious was baking in an oven nearby. Hansel and Gretel came upon a clearing in the middle of the woods. They were delighted to see in the center of the clearing a house made entirely of food. It had gingerbread walls, like at Christmas time when you build the gingerbread houses or you go to the museums or the schools and they have gingerbread houses and they have icing and gummy bears and sweet tarts and all kinds of things on it. This is what this house looks like. A fence made of candy canes and a garden of gumdrop shrubs. The roof was covered in frosting and the windows were made of clear sugar panes. I've never seen anything so delicious, Gretel exclaimed. Oh, let's see if we can see that. Can you see the house? It looks just like the little gingerbread house, doesn't it? They're in the woods. That sounds wonderful. That would be fun to make. We can do that at Christmas time. We did that one year at Christmas time. She and her brother dashed toward the house and began eating it. They were so hungry and tired from their journey, they didn't even think to ask the resident for permission. Suddenly, the door of the home opened and a kind-looking old woman stepped outside. Who's there? The old woman said. What are you doing to my house? Please forgive us, Hansel said. We were hungry and lost in the woods when we found your house. The old woman smiled at them, showing rotting teeth behind her wrinkled lips. I didn't realize you were children, she said happily. No need to apologize, my dear. I built a home out of food for children just like you. Please eat as much as you like. Hansel and Gretel were certain the old woman must be an angel in disguise. They ate the candy cane fence and the gumdrop shrubs. They ate the sugar pane windows and licked all the frosting off the roof. By the time Hansel and Gretel were full, they'd eaten everything but the gingerbread walls. Now come inside and rest, my dears, the old woman said. There are more goodies and soft beds waiting for you. Hansel and Gretel eagerly did as the old woman requested, knowing they could use a rest after their journey through the woods. However, when they went inside, there were no goodies or beds to be found, only a large cage and an enormous oven. The old woman threw Hansel and Gretel in the cage and locked the door. She took off the mask of an old woman, and the children saw that the rest of her was as rotten as her teeth. I'll try to make a really ugly face. Can you make a really ugly face with me? Or ugly teeth and all scrunched up? Come on, make your best ugly face. Everybody do it. It's fun. I'm an ugly face. She wasn't a sweet old woman at all, but an ugly old witch. One of you shall be my dinner, and the other shall be my slave, the witch cackled. Ha 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 ha. That'll teach you not to wander the woods alone. The witch pulled Gretel out of the cage and handed her a broom. Sweep the house, girl. I want a clean home before my meal. Not having much choice, Gretel swept the house until it was spotless. The witch lit a fire in the oven and then pulled Hansel out of the cage. You shouldn't eat me yet, Hansel pleaded. I'm too thin and frail to make a meal, but if you keep feeding me, soon I'll make a feast. The witch scratched the hairs on her chin and thought it over. "Mm, that's an excellent idea," the witch said. I shall keep feeding you until you outgrow the cage. Then you shall be my first meal of the winter. For weeks and weeks, the witch forced Hansel to eat delicious sweets, while Gretel was forced to clean inside and outside the house. At the end of every day, the witch would peer into the cage and squint at Hansel. Are you pleasantly plump yet? The witch asked. Hansel assumed the witch must have bad vision. Otherwise, surely she could see that his clothes were much tighter than before, and he had grown rounder every day. He quickly thought of a way to use the witch's failing eyes to save his life. I'd make a decent bite, but not enough to serve your appetite, Hansel lied. The witch huffed and puffed, then ordered Gretel to. That reminds me of the book we read before. He huffed and puffed. Who was that? The big bad wolf from the Three Little Pigs. He huffed and he puffed, remember? Then ordered Gretel to cook her a rat stew for dinner. Rat stew. I guess you eat what you eat. Um, Where did our rat stew go? Okay, the next day, as Gretel was cleaning up leaves outside the house, she put a couple of sticks in her pocket. Later that night, she slid them into Hansel's cage just before the witch peered inside. Are you reasonably round yet? The witch asked. He's as thin as he's ever been, Gretel said. Hansel, hold out your hand so the witch can feel your bony fingers. Gretel nodded to the stick she had given him, and Hansel knew what to do. He held out one stick like it was part of his hand, and the witch felt it. She moaned and groaned, then ordered Gretel to prepare spider soup for her supper. Rat soup, spider soup. Hansel and Gretel didn't know how much longer they could continue tricking the witch. They knew she was growing impatient because the next day she peered into the cage even before the sun had set. Are you finally fat? She asked. I'm ample for snacking, but a full meal you'd be lacking, Hansel lied again. He held out a stick as he had done the night before. The witch felt the stick and her face went bright red. I've waited long enough, the witch shouted. Fat or not, I will eat you tonight. Prepare the oven, girl. Gretel opened the wide door to the oven and filled it with firewood. She lit a match, and a healthy fire grew inside. The witch stood beside her, and a sinister smile grew across her ugly face. Now, I want you to test the fire to see if it's hot, the witch said. Gretel knew the witch was trying to trick her. She was going to eat both of them for dinner. But I don't know, Gretel said, thinking fast. Will you show me what to do? Stupid girl, the witch said. Move aside and I will show you. It's very simple. You just lean into the oven like this and touch the flames with your Gretel pushed the witch into the oven with all her might and locked the door behind her. The witch screamed as she was cooked to a crisp. When her screams finally came to a stop, Gretel freed Hansel from the cage. Just before they escaped the house, Hansel found a vase full of rubies and diamonds the witch had kept on a shelf. He and Gretel filled their pockets with the jewels and ran into the woods. Oh, here's the picture of the witch. All these stories are just so violent. The witch being pushed into the fire by Gretel. I'm sorry if you were just about to sleep and I screamed so loudly. They ran far away from the witch's gingerbread house and never looked back. Eventually, they came to the edge of the woods and saw a very familiar cottage. Gretel, look, we're home, Hansel exclaimed. The woodcutter heard his children and rushed out to greet them. He was so overjoyed to see them that tears filled his eyes and rolled down his face. Hansel and Gretel looked around the cottage, but the woodcutter's wife was nowhere to be found. Father, what happened to our stepmother? Gretel asked. The same day you went missing, she got lost in the woods and a pack of wolves found her. So, what she wanted to happen to the children is what happened to her. He said, I was so worried the same had happened to you, but you're both alive and well, so all is right in the world. The woodcutter embraced his children and never let them out of his sight again. They used the jewels to buy a new home much closer to the nearby village, and Hansel and Gretel ate all the sweets they wanted without fear of the witch. The family survived the winter and lived happily ever after. So smart children that outsmarted the evil ones. And we have a scripture that says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And how were they good? They were good to each other. They were smart, they were clever, and they were loving. So yay, they ended up happily ever after. All right. I hope that story just makes you giggle and not be worried. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to have sweet dreams about gingerbread houses and delicious candies to eat. And I will read to you next time. Shh, sweet sleep well. See ya.